I'm Steve Smith. Welcome to this episode of Cornerstone Horseman Tips. When you first start to teach your horse to negotiate obstacles, whether you're doing it recreationally or you're doing it competitively, it can be really exciting, it can be a lot of fun, especially when you start to go up into your intermediate and your advanced levels. I know of a couple trainers. One that comes to mind is Bobby Kerr. He can do some really amazing things with his horses, especially in the time frame that he's given them. I've seen him climb ramps on top of trailers, do spins, climb down, sit down, some pretty amazing things. He's a really talented trainer. Another guy that comes to mind is TJ Cliburn. This guy can get his horse to jump through fire, and when I say he can jump through fire, I'm not talking about just a little bit of fire. I'm talking he's encompassed with fire and the flames are just inches away from his horse. Really talented trainers. But just like those trainers and any other type of training that you do with your horses, it's important to establish a starting point. So what I want to do in this episode of Cornerstone Horseman Tips is I want to show you how I start to teach my horses to negotiate obstacles, the two types of obstacles that you'll pretty much come in contact when you're starting to do this, and then also the prerequisites that I like to put on my horses before I start to negotiate the obstacles. So let's get started. When I first start to teach my horse to negotiate obstacles, I like to teach him on the ground first and then transition it to saddle. The reason why I like to do that is because it keeps me safe on the ground and it gives me an idea of how they're going to handle the obstacle whenever we approach it, even if it's just a basic obstacle. Because if they're going to act silly, jump sideways, jump over it, snort, whatever, I'd much rather discover it on the ground where I'm safe rather than discover it under saddle. By this point, my training should be pretty much done to where they're not going to act up, but with them being a horse, you really never know. So the first time I go over some obstacles, I like to just lunge them through it. I don't lunge them through every single obstacle, but once they kind of prove to me kind of what kind of temperament or disposition they're going to have, then I'll go ahead and just start negotiating them under saddle. But in the beginning, I always try to do it on the ground. And whenever I start to do this on the ground, I actually have prerequisites that I like for my horse to have before I really ever approach an obstacle, because it just makes the job easier. One of the first prerequisites that I like to have on my horse is I want to make sure that they can just lunge around me with what I call controlled impulsion rather than erratic impulsion. Whenever I send my horse off or he's lunging around me, I don't want him to be like a horse on a launch pad with rocket fuel. I want him to go around nice, quiet, relaxed, head down and quiet. So what I'll do here is I'll just lunge him around. And you see how he's going around nice and quiet, kind of on a loose line here? I want to make sure that my horse is at least at what I would call a 50% proficiency level, to where he's doing it somewhat to where I feel pretty calm, pretty quiet about it. The other thing that I want on my horse is, you notice that as he's going around, his shoulder's elevated, he's not diving into me, and he's got a little bit of bend to his body. I want him a little bit soft in the rib cage. And the reason why I want them soft in the rib cage is because a lot of times whenever you're starting to lunge them up to an obstacle, they'll get more focused on that obstacle when you're over here, and they'll start to look like this, and they'll start to shoulder into you like this. I want that bend in the rib cage so that whenever they're lunging around me, they don't push on me. I can get their head and neck tilted back in toward me and that rib cage bent to where they can go on a nice arc between me and the obstacle. I don't want them so focused on that obstacle that they start to arc away from me and push into me. The other thing that I like to have on my horses is I want to make sure that I can yield their hindquarters and it be nice and quiet. Because as they're going around the obstacle, or between me and the obstacle, I want to know that I can yield their hindquarters so that I can send them the new direction. Yield their hindquarters. And then send them back like this. One of the other things that I like to have on my horses before I start to negotiate the obstacle is to have a little bit of shoulder control, because sometimes them horses will get a little pushy with you and they'll start to shoulder into you. So I want to make sure that as he's lunging around here, I can pick that shoulder up and I can really get him to move that shoulder away from me, like so. I don't want him to be pushing on me. And whenever you start to teach your horse to negotiate obstacles, there's really two types of obstacles that you're going to encounter. One would be like a barrel, something that you can go around, or the other type of obstacle would be like a banner on an arena wall or a creek or a lakefront. Something that you can go up to or over, but you can't go around. And when I teach my horses this, you really will handle the two the same, or you'll approach the two type of obstacles the same on the ground. Do it a little different under saddle, which we'll get to here in a minute. But I've got a barrel here that I want to show you. This is an obstacle that you can go around, and I want to show you how I like to teach my horses just get used to it until they'll eventually go around it, feel comfortable with it, and follow my leadership. So what I do is I establish a starting point. Sometimes you get some horses that you can't get any closer than this with them before they want to drag you off, run you off, or they start kind of snorting or getting a little hawky with you. They don't want to get any closer than this. So what I'll do is I'll simply start sending the horse in between me and the obstacle, and I'll start yielding their hindquarters. Side to side, yielding the hindquarters. And what I'll do is I'll send them back and forth until they get nice. Once they're nice, quiet, and relaxed, what I'll do is I'll take just one nice size step toward the obstacle, and then I'll start sending them back and forth between me and the obstacle. Now, when I do this, what will normally happen is they'll get a little sensitive, they'll get a little more snotty, but I just keep doing this until they start to relax and calm down. Once they get quiet and they calm down, I'll take another step, and I'll slowly kind of work my way up toward the obstacle, just sending them back and forth between me and the obstacle. And this guy, he's done a lot of obstacles, so he's not really giving me much trouble here, but I chose this horse just for the time's sake, so we can kind of illustrate to you what it's supposed to look like as a finished product. Take another step, send them back and forth between me and the object. And I'll keep doing this until eventually I'm up to the object, just sending them back and forth, like so. Forth, back and forth. And you see how he's just kind of starting to walk instead of trot? That's what I really like my horses to do. I like them to be so quiet and so calm and relaxed that they feel confident that they can just walk through. They don't have to run through. And then eventually what I'll do, once they're nice and quiet and they're yielding their hindquarters and soft, I'll let them rest at the object, and they don't necessarily have to touch their nose to it, but they at least have to get close enough to where they're quiet and they don't mind being here. The obstacle we have here is the second type of obstacle that your horse would normally encounter. This is one that the horse can't really go around, but he can either go up to or go over. What this is, it's the side of one of those above ground pools that's been cut out and then some railroad ties laid on the end to kind of keep it from blowing over. But it simulates a creek. It's blue, it's long. He can't really go around it, but he can go over it or up to it. And how I approach that is very similar to what we did with the barrel. I just establish my starting point. If this is as close as I can get, then what I'll do is I'll start sending my horse between me and the object, yielding his hindquarters, sending him the new direction between me and the object, and I'll keep doing this until my horse gets really nice and really quiet. Once he does, I'll take that step forward, and then I'll just kind of repeat the process, sending him back between me and the object until he gets nice and quiet. Yield the hindquarters, take my step, and when I start to get up to it, I'll send him back and forth until he commits to putting a foot either on or over the obstacle. There we go. I'll let him out, yield his hindquarters, and then just keep sending him back and forth over the obstacle or the water, whatever it may be, until my horse is nice and quiet. And this guy's so nice and quiet, all he wants to do is just eat a little grass when he gets on the other side. And the hindquarters. And then eventually what I'll do is whenever he's either on the obstacle or in the water, I'll let him rest where he wants to be.